Welcome back to Launchpad. I'm Christian Reddy, your friendly neighborhood astronomer. And I hadn't really expected to make a follow-up to my last video about the James Webb Space Telescope quite this soon, but officials from NASA and Ariane Space are now acknowledging that the James Webb Space Telescope's launch will likely slip from October 31st to sometime in mid-November or maybe even early December. The news came on June 1st during a press event hosted by the European Space Agency. It was meant as a briefing for European media to talk about the Webb telescope and outline the remaining steps needed to get ready for launch. There wasn't any formal announcement made about a launch delay, but afterward, during the Q&A, officials characterized October 31st as a no earlier than launch date. And they agreed that the launch probably won't actually happen until sometime in mid-November to early December. So the news isn't great, but it's not terribly surprising either. And there was some light shed on some of the problems that Ariane 5 was happening and the next steps that are necessary before James Webb can launch. So today we're going to break all of that down, but first I did want to thank Magellan TV who are sponsoring today's video. If space telescopes are your thing, then I invite you to check out Hubble's Enduring Legacy, a documentary about the iconic telescope's history and what it has revealed about our universe over the last 3 decades. This documentary and many more are available at Magellan TV. You can enjoy content on topics such as art, nature, history, and of course, space and science. And now Magellan is offering my viewers 30% off an annual subscription. That's a full year of Magellan for just $3.50 a month. And this offer applies to both new and returning subscribers alike. Simply visit the link in the description to claim your discounted membership today. At the June 1st event, Thomas Zurbuchen, the Associate Administrator for Science at NASA, verified that Webb is nearing the end of its testing and verification phases. He mentioned an issue with Webb's transponders. Now, this was something that was mentioned previously a month earlier at NASA's May 11th event. I wanted to find out some more about these transponder problems, so I did a little bit of digging, and I found a presentation from the JWST project office to NASA's Astrophysics Advisory Committee in March 2021. It described the transponder problems in a little bit more detail. It seems that on January 7th, transponder number 2's power output dropped. 2 days later, transponder number 1 started resetting itself in a continuous loop during a power-on test. The causes of both failures were identified as workmanship issues, and they had just degraded over time. The transponders were sent back to the vendor for rework and testing. The boxes are expected back in mid-June. They'll get reinstalled on the spacecraft and undergo a battery of electrical tests as well as a number of communication tests with the Deep Space Network. After that, it's a matter of getting Webb all closed out and installed in its shipping container. To that end, Zurbuchen said that Webb is on track to ship to French Guiana by the end of August, and by that time they'll have little to no schedule reserves left. I guess that's because of the transponder issue. However, the critical path to launching Webb seems to be with the Ariane 5 launch vehicle, specifically its launch fairing. Daniel Deschambre, acting head of Ariane 5 operations at Ariane Space, said that the launcher experienced vibrations when the fairing separated on 2 launches in February and August of 2020. He also spoke about how the fairing for the August launch had been modified to vent out the residual air in order to prevent damage to JWST during depressurization. Now, we talked about the venting problem and the vibrations in a lot more detail in our previous video, so I won't repeat all of that here. But during the event, Deschambre confirmed that the venting modifications had nothing to do with the anomalous vibrations and that the 2 issues were unrelated to each other. Later during the Q&A portion, he stated that the origin of the vibration anomaly had been identified and corrected. The new fairings were in the process of completing their tests and a qualification review had started, and that they should be complete in the next few days to weeks. Unfortunately, Deschambre didn't elaborate on what the actual problem was or what corrective actions were taken. He only said that they were just relatively minor problems and that they won't jeopardize Webb in any way. Cool. Now, as far as the actual launch is concerned, Beatriz Romero, the Webb launch director at Ariane Space, verified that there are 2 commercial Ariane 5 launches scheduled ahead of JWST. The first of these launches is scheduled for the second half of July, with a second one planned for the following month. Romero said that following the second launch in August, they'll begin a 10-week launch campaign just for JWST. The first 2 weeks of the campaign will be spent getting the facilities prepared. Webb has very strict cleanliness requirements that exceed those required for typical spacecraft. So the clean room at the launch facility and the launch fairing will undergo a extra thorough cleaning and prep that will take about 2 weeks to complete. During the 2-week prep, Webb will be sailing from California through the Panama Canal to French Guiana. After its arrival, they'll need another 8 weeks to get JWST integrated, tested, sealed up in the fairing, and stacked on the rocket. 8 weeks is a long time, but part of that is because of the strict contamination protocols they'll have to observe. Even water vapor is a contaminant because once the telescope cools, water molecules will permanently freeze inside the telescope. So yeah, they'll have to deal with a number of contamination protocols they normally wouldn't have to. But once everything is ready, they can launch on any given day between 8:45 and 11 a.m. local time. Now, during the press event, there wasn't a formal announcement of a launch delay, but during the Q&A, Thomas Zurbuchen was asked if James Webb doesn't ship until the end of August, then doesn't a 10-week launch campaign imply the launch really won't occur until sometime in mid-November? Zurbuchen said, yeah, that sounds about right. They also reiterated that Webb can launch to L2 any time of the year, so they're not constrained to a limited launch window. But the launch window that NASA and ESA have agreed to lasts from October 31st to early December. So yeah, right now, the critical path is with Ariane Space. They still have to complete 2 commercial launches and demonstrate they've resolved the vibration anomaly before they can even start getting ready for James Webb. Meanwhile, James Webb continues to get ready for Ariane 5. Zurbuchen said they are on track to completing all of the tasks and having it ready to go by the end of August. So there it is. No formal announcement of a delay like when they announced the launch would be slipping from March to October 31st. Rather, it was more of a, oh yeah, no earlier than October 31st, November-ish. Still, it's no surprise that that's the headline that came from the press event. And maybe that's why NASA issued a formal statement a couple of days later stating that, quote, JWST remains on schedule for a launch readiness date no earlier than October 31st, 2021, and that, quote, final stow, closeout, and pack and ship are imminent. So is this just some nefarious plot to sneak some really bad news amid a bunch of JWST happy talk? Well, I, for one, am cynical enough to think that yes, that's exactly what they did. But the truth is that just about every launch date is really a no earlier than date. Launches get rescheduled all the time for a number of issues. But I also think that the no earlier than language takes into account the reality that Webb is the most complex and fragile space telescope we've ever built. A lot of that complexity and fragility is because we are building a telescope that is bigger than any available launch vehicle, and we're sending it 1.5 million kilometers away into the deep cold. Now, many of you commented on my last video that we should just scrap the Ariane 5 and let SpaceX launch it on the Falcon Heavy. Yeah, no, there's no such thing as just switching launch vehicles, especially considering that Falcon Heavy's launch fairing is too small for JWST. Sure, we could pay SpaceX to make a bigger fairing, but we're already over budget to begin with. Besides, do we really want to wait for another launch provider to get ready? Me neither. Yes, the Ariane was chosen before SpaceX was even a gleam in Elon Musk's eye. But the fact is that the Ariane 5 really is the best tool for the job. Since Webb is ultimately an international partnership, I'm okay with ESA covering the costs. Now, none of this is to downplay or ignore the fact that there were some real management problems with this project. It's understandable to view a further delay like yet another gut punch. But we're talking about a few weeks, not a few months, and certainly not a few years. And let's not forget to keep our eyes on the prize. Webb is going to shed light on our cosmic origins. It will observe the universe's first galaxies, reveal the birth of stars and their planets, and it'll look for exoplanets with the potential for life. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited for Webb, and I'm thankful for all of the hard work people are putting in to make it happen. I'm also very thankful for my Patreon supporters who are helping to keep Launchpad Astronomy going, and I'm also thankful to you for watching today's video. If you'd like to join me on this journey through this incredible universe of ours, well, please make sure that you subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new videos. Until next time, stay patient and stay curious, my friends.